What's up, everybody? It is the end of 2023, which means that it's officially time to count down the best and the worst of the year in terms of film. Starting, of course, with the bottom of the barrel, or at least the top 10 worst films of the year that I've seen personally. Some of these I've reviewed on the channel, others I've reviewed on my written website, interpretingeverything.com. And what's most interesting is how much nostalgia plays into this year's list and how much, disappointment just kind of obliterates quite a few of these films. You'll see what I mean. But without further ado, we're going to be starting off this list with number 10, The Outlaws. The Outlaws is a film that's essentially everything that you expect it to be, which means that it's not necessarily bad. It's just nothing that's specifically good either. It's very, very forgettable. It's very run-of-the-mill. All I really remember from it is, you got Pierce Brosnan in there in a story that's more or less Meet the Parents meets Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Good in foundation, not so good in execution, and this time next year I'll probably not even know what the heck it is. Number 9, The Shift. Early on in the year, you might have seen the film Sound of Freedom. That came from a little movie studio called Angel Studios. It got a lot of attention during that time because Sound of Freedom was this movie about human trafficking, and it was a true story, and it was very interesting, even though that movie was more message than plot because Angel Studios is a religious studio. But they were doing something that was really interesting because they were giving people free tickets based off of other people that loved the movie so much, they paid it forward. They paid other people's tickets. That being said, after Sound of Freedom came out, The Shift came out, which was a movie that was a modern retelling of a Bible story. I think it was Job, the story of Job. It was just retold in a very modern day multiverse sci-fi story that had its moments, but was more or less a lot closer to what I would expect from religious films, and it just wasn't all that great. Number 8 is The Expendables 4, or Expendables, as some people would like to say. This is the first one on the list that hit my nostalgia bones just a little bit. Let me explain. I know a lot of people were saying that it was going to be bad before it even came out, but I had hopes because I actually really enjoyed the previous films. I actually didn't love Expendables 1 all that much, but I thought that each one got better and better. Expendables 2, a lot of fun. Expendables 3, I loved that movie, so I figured go with the flow. Expendables 4 should be awesome, and it's not. The reason why is very, very clear, to the point where it's like, why did they even make this movie? Because the whole point of any of these Expendables movies was to make characterized versions of a bunch of action stars from the 90s, right? People that you grew up watching and loving and all of this, and they're just basically making a tongue-in-cheek version of themselves. The plot was never that important. You didn't really care that much about what the movie was about as much as it was about all these different people in them. The cast list has been minimized quite a bit, and even the people that you knew were in there that you wanted to watch the movie for anyways were barely in there either. Instead, what you got is a lot of Megan Fox and 50 Cent, some bad graphics, and just a whole lot of different reasons not to watch the movie. Number 7 is Good Burger 2. This one hit my nostalgia bones the most out of the entire list because I wanted it to succeed the most. I love the first Good Burger movie. I've seen it probably 100 times. I've rented it basically every single weekend as a kid from Family Video or Hollywood Video or Blockbuster or wherever. That orange videotape is just, it's hilarious. This sequel was bad. It rehashed literally the same plot of the first movie, almost on purpose it seemed like, but what's worse is that the characters haven't grown or matured in any kind of way. In fact, they've gotten worse. Specifically, Kenan Thompson's character, if you remember watching the first movie, his was the main character that actually had an arc and had something intrinsic that he had learned from beginning to end. He stopped being a money hog, he started learning what it meant to be a real friend and not take advantage of people, especially who he called his best friend. In this movie, he basically learned nothing. He was doing the same stuff. He was taking advantage of people. He was money hungry again. It made no real sense. And all the jokes were basically the same thing anyways because there was no originality there. Number 6, The Nun 2. This one kind of sort of played a little bit on nostalgia, but not much because I didn't love the first Nun movie. I do, however, like a couple of the Conjuring films, you know, so I always have hope that somebody's gonna make a movie that exists in this universe that is going to match the level of horror, of fear, and honestly of cinematic greatness as some of the other ones. The Nun 2 did not do this. It rehashed a lot of the first movie. It continued the story of the first film. It continued the story of some of the same characters we saw in the first film, which nobody really cared about in the first place, and it had a whodunit story that nobody cared about, and of course none of it was scary and most of it was boring. Number 5 is Crypto Shadows. Now this is a film that I covered on my Genre Blast Film Fest coverage this year. It ultimately follows a woman that is living in the middle of nowhere as she is trying to secretly code a new form of cryptocurrency. All the while somebody out there is watching, somebody's trying to steal her code in order to make money. The foundation of the story isn't that bad. However, the execution made it obvious that these people knew nothing about how coding works, and it was obviously very low budget, and it almost reveled in that. Not the greatest display of acting, not the greatest display of anything, and because there wasn't as many actors that they hired for the film, everybody that this person was talking to had to be seen off screen, almost like it was the director's good friend that lived in, you know, Argentina that decided to have their voice play a part in the film but not actually be in the film itself. It really was just this one girl throughout the film, and it was just not that great. Number 4 is Murder Size. So this is another film that I covered in Genre Blast this year. The main idea here is that in the 80s we had a ton of slasher films as well as pervy exercise videos, and this film is a mixture of them both. Most of it doesn't make sense plot-wise, narratively. The acting's pretty atrocious. The gore is okay at times, but there's not much of it. It's just overly pervy for no real reason. And again, it doesn't make any sense. I think it was trying to be tongue-in-cheek. I think it was trying to be clever, but it just wasn't. The whole thing was just something that I'm trying to erase from my mind. Number 3, Murder Mystery 2. This one hit my nostalgia bones again. I'm not gonna say that I loved the first murder mystery found on Netflix with Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston, but I did enjoy it enough because I've always loved murder mysteries in general, whether it's movies that I'm watching, TV shows that I'm watching, or books that I'm reading. I like the idea in general. Both the first and the second movie had the same issue in terms of not keeping it constrained, you know, keeping it as a locked room mystery so that we always see these characters, and yet it's so tense because murders are still happening at the same time. Neither movie had that, so neither movie was perfect, but the second movie was significantly worse because there wasn't really even a murder. The mystery was like, what am I even watching? The characters were forgettable. I've forgotten all of them already. It was just boring. The entire movie was boring. It was unfunny. It was just like, several times while watching, I thought to myself, I could just stop this film and I would live the rest of my life in peace and be better for it, and that's true. Number 2 is Fire NATO. This is a film that I got a special early screener to watch. The idea of it is pretty simple. You got your natural disaster, tongue-in-cheek, so bad that it's good type of film. At least that's what it wants you to think that it is. It's about a tornado that catches fire, and a bunch of characters are trying to warn everybody in town that it's headed their way. All the while, there's another secondary storyline that has something to do with a house invasion. Either story would work a lot better if they just focused on that instead of the other. But the fact that they tried to make both of the same stories happen in the same movie made very little sense. It was just bad. And the worst film of the year, number 1, My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3. Another film that hit those nostalgia bones. I consider myself to be a pretty substantially big fan of the first My Big Fat Greek Wedding film. From the moment that jingle just starts playing in the first film and the narration, I'm hooked. I thought that that film is instantly iconic for me. It's funny, it's relatable, it's awkward in just the best of ways. It's great. And then they made a second film. Now that second film, I almost remember absolutely nothing about. But it was essentially what it sought out to do. It probably kind of rehashed some of the same jokes of the first film, but what was important to note was that the entire cast was still in that film. The third film, however, There's no reason for this film to exist, okay? The movie starts off saying Gus, you know, the father of the family, has since died. And we're sitting there, oh, that's sad, but at least they have the mom there, right? Sure, but she has dementia and she's forgetting about all of her family members. That's how this comedy started. And then the rest of the film, let's take that whole family, the big fat Greek family, let's split it in half, okay? Now let's split that in half so that we have a quarter of the family maybe, and let's take that portion of the family and shoot them off to Greece, okay? And that's what we'll focus on. There'll be lots of visuals of Greece and how beautiful it is. It'll be like a virtual tour guide of the country of Greece, which I will say it is beautiful, but there's no plot. Nobody's doing anything in the movie. They're just walking around, being stereotypes of themselves, making the same jokes that they've made since part one. The chemistry's gone because most of the family's gone. The comedy has dried out at this point. There's also not really a Greek wedding in the film. I mean, there is because they're in Greece, so there's a wedding that shows up, so, you know, Greek wedding, but it's not their Greek wedding, it's somebody else's. That movie is abysmal. Avoid it at all costs. And there you have it. That's my top 10 worst films of 2023. I'm gonna try to get out a top 10 of best movies of the year as well soonish. I'm not sure when I'll get it out. Maybe today. No, not today. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe the day after that. I'm gonna try to get it out before 2024. But if not, sorry. And until next time, guys, peace out.